Hey class, this is Mr. Clark, and these are the video lecture notes for History 17B, Chapter 22, The Age of Empire, American Foreign Policy, 1890 to 1914. Next slide. There's an overview of the chapter. First heading is entitled Turner, Mahan, and the Roots of Empire. In the last decades of the 19th century, after the Civil War, the United States pivoted from a profoundly isolationist approach to a distinct zeal for American expansion. Next slide. The nation's earlier isolationism originated from the deep scars left by the Civil War and its need to recover both economically and mentally from that event. This map shows you how the United States expanded. Next slide. But as the Industrial Revolution changed the way the country worked and the American West reached its farthest point, American attitudes towards foreign expansion shifted. Next slide. Businesses sought new markets to export their factory-built goods, oil, and tobacco products, as well as generous trade agreements to secure access to raw materials. Next slide. Early social reformers saw opportunities to spread Christian gospel and the benefits of American life to those in less developed nations. Next slide. With the rhetoric of Frederick Jackson Turner and the strategies of Alfred Mahan underpinning the desire for expansion abroad, the country moved quickly to ready itself for the creation of an American empire. These are two of the writers and philosophers who inspired that expansion that we're discussing. Next slide. The next heading is the Spanish-American War and Overseas Empire. In the wake of the Civil War, American economic growth combined with efforts of evangelist missionaries to push for greater international influence and overseas presence. Next slide. By confronting Spain over its imperial role in Cuba, the United States took control of valuable territories in Central America and the Pacific, and some of these territories included Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and some islands in the Pacific, including Guam. Next slide. The annexation of the former Spanish colonies of Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, combined with the acquisition of Hawaii, Samoa, and Wake Island, positioned the United States as the predominant world power in the South Pacific and Caribbean. Next slide. While some prominent figures in the United States vehemently disagreed with the idea of American empire building, their concerns were overruled by an American public and a government that understood American power overseas as a form of prestige, prosperity, and progress. Next slide. Next heading is entitled Economic Imperialism in East Asia. The United States shifted from isolationism to empire building with its involvement and victory in the Spanish-American War. But at the same time, the country sought to expand its reach through another powerful tool, its economic clout. Next slide. The Industrial Revolution gave American businesses an edge in delivering high-quality products at lowered costs, and the pursuit of an quote-unquote open door policy with China opened new markets to American goods. The next heading is entitled Roosevelt's Big Stick Foreign Policy. While President McKinley ushered in the era of American empire through military strength and economic coercion, his successor, Theodore Roosevelt, established a new foreign policy approach. Next slide. At the crux of his foreign policy was a thinly veiled threat. Roosevelt believed that in the light of the country's recent military successes, it was unnecessary to use force to achieve foreign policy goals as long as the military could threaten force. Next slide. Next heading is entitled Taft's Dollar Diplomacy. All around the globe, the next president, Taft, sought to use U.S. economic might as a lever in foreign policy. He relied less on military action or the threat of such action than either McKinley or Roosevelt before him. However, he both threatened and used military force when economic coercion proved unsuccessful. In Asia, Taft tried to continue to support the balance of power, but his efforts backfired and alienated Japan. Next slide. Increasing tensions between the United States and Japan would finally explode nearly 30 years later with the outbreak of World War II. Next slide. And that's it for chapter 22.